but I was kind of hoping it would be kind of like you would be my own personal Yoda.
Tell me more about that. What would that look like?
I don't know. It's just I'm a big Star Wars nerd, so I've always wanted my own personal Yoda to guide me towards using the Holy Spirit like the Force. That'd be fantastic.
That's a great idea. Maybe spiritual directors should switch our marketing to your own personal Yoda. I like that.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Circuit Walkers. My name is Bill Sarden, and I am joined today with Reverend Mary Jane Cole, who is also a spiritual director. And I am really eager to talk with her and find out a little bit more about spiritual direction. Hi, Mary Jane. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Bill. How are you? Thank you for this invitation to be with you today.
Yeah, we've got some storms coming in, so I hope you're safe and okay.
And you as well.
Yes. Well, can you share a little bit about yourself with our audience?
Sure. I am a United Methodist clergy person, ordained as a deacon, and also a trained spiritual director. For the past many years, I've had a private practice of spiritual direction. And for the past couple of years, I've also been serving in a small role at First United Methodist Church in Little Rock as spiritual director in residence.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that. That's good to know. Could you share, because there's a lot of people and there's different definitions of what a deacon is in the United Methodist Church?
Well, that's a great question. Deacons are ordained to word, service, compassion, and justice. Many deacons serve outside the local church. And basically, we are invited and called to bridge the church and the world, to take the church into the world and to invite people to experience God and Christ in ways that encourage them to be a part of what God is doing in the world.
One of the things we are trying to do with this podcast is care for people that are struggling spiritually. And so that was one of the reasons I wanted to invite you. I've got friends that go to see you for spiritual direction, but I'll be honest with you, I've never participated in spiritual direction, so I'm not 100% sure exactly what spiritual direction is. Could you share with us a little bit?
I'd be glad to, Bill. And you are not alone in that. Many people don't understand. Spiritual direction is just very simply a soul friend or a soul companion. Spiritual directors are trained to be good listeners and to hold sacred and unconditional loving space for another person as they are exploring their spiritual path, as they are exploring their relationship with God or the divine, the holy, higher power, however they may see that in their lives. My favorite descriptions of spiritual direction are that we are people who hold sacred space for other people. We're sort of space makers, if you will, but we are not the real director. The presence and the power of the Holy Spirit is truly our guide, and we invite that presence into the space with us when spiritual directors are meeting with an individual one-on-one. And so we hold that sacred. We listen deeply and don't try to ask a lot of reflective questions so that people can hear themselves. When we hear ourselves answer questions, sometimes we notice things. And spiritual directors are also paying attention to what people share, their stories, and listening for kind of the story behind the story, listening for the movement of the Spirit or for God's presence in their lives when maybe it's hard for us to see that ourselves sometimes. People seek spiritual direction for a lot of reasons. Sometimes when they're discerning a question in their lives and seeking God's presence, or maybe struggling to find God's presence in their lives. People seek spiritual direction simply as a way to tend their soul, to care for their soul on a daily basis or a regular basis, just like we would care for our physical or emotional or mental well-being. People seek spiritual direction maybe when they feel like they can't find God in their lives, or they're struggling to find that, when they are struggling with spiritual practices. Sometimes there are teaching moments in in the spiritual direction encounters, I happen to be incredibly passionate about a tool called the Enneagram. So that comes forth in spiritual direction sessions sometimes if people are interested, willing, and know something about that for themselves.
So if I came to you for spiritual direction, what would I expect for my first session with you?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, one thing that people always ask about, how is spiritual direction different from counseling or therapy or pastoral care? And there are some similarities and there are differences. Spiritual directors are not aimed at fixing a problem or coming up with solutions or really giving particular guidance, even though we are called spiritual directors. We're there to hold sacred space while the individual and God work through those things. So the expectation, the similarity is in this area that we hold confidential space and we hold sacred space. So you could expect that we would have a conversation about what brings you, what questions might you be asking of God, what is stirring in your soul, how is your soul. Often I invite people to engage in a spiritual autobiography initially, not always, but much of the time, so that they can take a look back at their spiritual journey and see where they've been, where they are, where they might like to go in their relationship with God and the care of their own soul. We would talk about the importance of confidentiality, and what it was shared in that space is held in the strictest confidence. The only way that would be breached is, as clergy, we are mandatory reporters, as you know. It's harm to self, others, or
Yeah.
abuse. So that is maintained in the spiritual direction relationship. So we do some kind of intake information about what brings you to spiritual direction. What are you seeking? What are your intentions? What are your hopes? And ask some questions. Sessions are about an hour in length generally, and the frequency is, on an average, people visit their spiritual director about once a month. At least that's been my practice.
Okay, so there are a lot of similarities
Mhm.
to seeing a counselor.
There are some, yeah.
But I was kinda hoping it would be kinda like you would be my own personal Yoda.
Tell me more about that. What would
Yeah.
that look like?
I don't know, it's just, I'm a big Star Wars nerd, so
I hear you.
I've always wanted my own
That.
personal Yoda to
Yeah.
guide me towards using the Holy Spirit like the Force, that'd be fantastic.
That's a great idea. Maybe spiritual directors should switch our marketing to your own personal Yoda. I like that.
Yeah, yeah. How did you get into spiritual direction?
Well, I was serving full time as an associate pastor at First United Methodist Church in Little Rock, and during that time was invited to participate in a spiritual direction certification training program through SMU, Perkins School of Theology. At that time, the United Methodist Foundation had offered a grant, and there was a local cohort to be held at Mount Eagle Retreat Center. So that was lovely and convenient and wonderful. So I felt hello calling. I kind of have this view that we have hello callings and goodbye callings through our journeys, and I just felt a strong leaning toward that. I always enjoyed and embraced the ministry of pastoral care, pastoral counseling, sitting with people. I have a previous degree in rehabilitation counseling, and had worked in healthcare, behavioral health care, prior to feeling a hello calling to ministry. And so I always just had a special affinity and interest in sitting with people and holding sacred and holy space. And so I'm very introverted, and so it kind of suits me well in that regard. I love being with people one on one. I also love being with people in groups and doing some teaching about spiritual practices and so forth. So I just felt like it was a good fit, and thoroughly enjoyed the program where I received training, and it was just a great experience. And so when I sensed a kind of a goodbye calling when it was time to leave full-time ministry as an associate pastor, I spent some time in discernment for about a year, and this is where I've landed, and I'm very grateful for it.
I would imagine during COVID, you probably saw an uptick in clientele.
Somewhat. I mean, everything switched, as you know, from in person to virtual meetings and sessions. But that is true. I think therapists, spiritual directors all saw an increase in people seeking just guidance, support, nurture, all of those things.
And has that continued on? Because my one I've been observing, it is a need that the need's even greater right now than it
Mhm.
was 3 years ago.
I think so. I think so. I would agree with that. And I think people are seeking, and spiritual direction is a wonderful ministry for people who are seeking and who have questions, whether they're complex questions or from their all questions are worthy, and just seeking to understand themselves and to know themselves better, how they fit into the world, how they understand God, what their view of God has changed or not changed, and how it's impacted how they're taking in everything in the world.
Who's a good candidate to seek out spiritual direction?
Well, I'm inclined to say anyone and everyone, Bill, is a good,
That's what I was hoping you'd say.
because I think that part of ourselves, my favorite quote, which has inspired me, is that we are spiritual. We are spiritual beings living a human life, not human beings living a spiritual life. And if that is true, and I believe it is, then that spiritual part of that we are spiritual beings, doesn't that deserve some tender loving care and some attention, that we are noticing that part of ourselves and caring for it just like we would our physical being and all parts of ourselves. And we all have questions about something, don't we?
Right.
We
So
all.
you are like a Yoda. Yoda has almost the exact same phrase that luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. So
That's right. I'm loving this Yoda reference. I'm going to just totally borrow that. Thank you for
just
it.
go with it. Go with it. That's my gift to you today.
I receive that. I receive that, Bill. Thank you so much. I
Yeah.
receive that as a gift.
Right.
So I think I have a spiritual director. I think that's if we're going to sit and hold sacred and holy space with someone, it's a good, pretty good idea that we're caring for our own souls as well, and it's a part of my self care.
Right.
Um,
Do you find that people are a little hesitant to reach out to a spiritual director? Because it seems to me that even with going to see a counselor, most of us almost feel ashamed that we need to reach out for help.
that's a great point, Bill. I think to some degree, there's probably some part of that, or that maybe people don't know what to bring to spiritual direction. I don't know, what I'm going to bring or what I'm going to talk about or what part of me is needing that kind of connection.
Yeah.
Um, does it invite as much kind of shame as you mentioned as maybe seeking therapy? That's a good question. I'm not sure. It could. Many of us have complicated relationships with church,
Right.
with organized religion, with God, with spirituality, that has impacted how we take all of that in. And sometimes that can breed a lack of confidence or shame or unworthiness or just a struggle in general with how do I fit into this world? Who am I and where do I belong?
Yeah, I ask this because I'm wondering if we as pastors need to
Mm,
be a little more vulnerable so that our
mm,
our laity understand that, yeah, we struggle too spiritually.
yes,
And it's okay to reach out. I tell my congregation all the time, one of the most beautiful gifts Jesus gives us is each other.
yeah, yes.
Yeah. And you're just one
Really.
more tool that
Mhm,
Christ offers to us as a spiritual
mhm.
director.
Well, thank you for that. I received that as well. Thank
Yeah.
you. I think vulnerability is so important for all of us, particularly as pastors, as clergy persons, that if we are inviting other people to be vulnerable, then modeling that to some degree is really important
Yeah.
to show that that's safe and there's unconditional love.
Right. And it obviously it's just between you and the person you're seeing. There's the same confidentiality you'd have with your doctor.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a very important tenet of spiritual direction is confidentiality.
That being said, I'm about to relaunch the Happy Hippie Jesus show with my friend Jeremy after Easter. and I know he sees you, so give me all the dirt. Tell me everything so I can just beat up on you.
Completely confidential.
No, it's just between you and I right now,
Right,
so
right.
it'll remain confidential.
Absolutely. Completely confidential.
No, he actually speaks very highly of you and
Mhm.
says that it is one of the best things he does is going to spend time with you. So
Appreciate that.
yeah. So that in fact, that's how I knew to reach out to you was through
Mm.
Jeremy that he shared with me. I think we need more resources though to let our laity and our clergy know who the spiritual directors are in our area.
We actually have a link on the Arkansas Conference website, arumc.org, and folks like T. Bolin and Tracy Depew and I are listed there as spiritual directors, and we can either, if none of us are a good match or a good fit, then we'll certainly find people. We have a list of spiritual directors throughout the state of Arkansas that are not only United Methodist, but but of other faith traditions as well.
I didn't realize Tracy Depew was a spiritual director, and
Yes,
and if you're an artistic person, she would be a great person to sit with.
absolutely, she would.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
if you
Yeah.
don't know Tracy Depew, is she still the choir director at St. James?
I don't think so.
Okay, well,
Just don't.
she is a beautiful musician
How
and
she
an
is.
artist,
Yeah.
so,
But I don't know that for sure. I
yeah.
haven't talked to her in a bit. So,
Well, she started there right when I was leaving St. James, and that was well over a decade and a half
oh,
ago, so if she's still there, then bravo to her that she has stayed in one place because, as United Methodist, we don't know how to do that very well.
right,
We
right.
tend
She's
to
very
move
gifted,
around.
as is T. Bolin and
Yeah.
many other people who are trained spiritual directors in our conference. So we have a plethora of people who would be honored to sit with others in that kind of sacred and holy space.
Yeah, and that's a great resource we have here in Arkansas, especially as small of a state as we are, to
Mhm,
have that many spiritual directors ready
mhm.
and willing to work with people.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's an important part of, fulfilling our calling as clergy persons and as laity and as people who are in discernment in ministry to have someone that they can talk to have someone to listen, to reflect, to ask questions, because we're kind of all in a space of discernment on and off, aren't we?
Yes, yes, for sure.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a constant, and if and I think that's also a sign that we're growing.
Absolutely. I would agree with
For sure.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. We're in motion.
yeah. So, how does someone know they're ready to begin working with a spiritual director?
Goodness, I think that is different for everyone. And my experience has been that people either may have some sort of experience in their lives that has invited them to, that they might need some direction in terms of they're asking questions about what's the next thing in their life, whether that might be personally, spiritually, vocationally, whatever it might be, some sort of large question that's looming in their hearts and souls. So sometimes it's a nudge, whether
Mm,
that's a nudge from an event in their life or an experience or a nudge from the spirit. And in general, also kind of circle back to it's just good soul care for everyone. It's just good to take care of that part of ourselves. Or that is who we are. That's the
right.
essence of who we are as spirit. And so to care for that and nurture that is just a great reason in and of itself to seek spiritual direction.
For sure. If somebody came to you and they said, I am struggling with my prayer life. Are there any practices or anything that you normally prescribe?
Oh, goodness. Well, I think a question like that would probably invite more questions. Spiritual
Okay.
directors ask more questions than they answer because the the holding of space invites the person to do the work, the individual to do the work with the Holy Spirit.
Right.
We are simply just sort of opening, helping them to kind of see the path ahead and what they might not see for themselves. I read once that a great description for a spiritual director is like that of a midwife.
Mm,
I cannot speak directly or personally to the work of a midwife, but we do sit alongside people and invite them to breathe, to not breathe, to encourage them to go forward, to hold back, and watch and wait while something new is being born within them, whatever that might be, whether it's a new way of seeing or being present with God. So I think that if someone were to come with a concern or question about their prayer life, it would invite questions from the spiritual director. What has your prayer life been like? What have you enjoyed in the past? What has given you life? What has helped you connect better to God or closer to God? What has not worked for you? What are some things you're interested in exploring in terms of prayer? How do you experience yourself? Is moving your body a prayer practice for you? Taking a walk,
Right.
a virtual group, or sitting still and centering prayer or meditation? What do you experience your soul longing for in this moment? And then we can explore some. Once the kind of people hear themselves answer those questions, then we might be able to explore in detail, well, here are some things you might consider trying.
Okay, I was kind of hoping you'd be like Monty Hall going, you can pick the prayer behind curtain one or the one under the box here.
Or, yeah, exactly.
Oh, you're going to make me do some work? Oh,
Yes, exactly. Yes. That is probably the annoying thing about spiritual direction. Sometimes people say, can you just tell me what to do?
yeah.
So, but that's between them and God.
So how has being a spiritual director shaped or changed your own faith journey?
Oh gosh, that is a great question, Bill. It has shaped and changed my own faith journey in very transformative ways, I believe. First of all, it has invited me to engage in my own spiritual direction work with a spiritual director, which has been life-giving, so that I'm on a regular basis talking to someone about the care of my own soul and questions that I have. And that's been life-changing for me. It's also invited me to be vulnerable. It's invited me to be more open with people and with myself and in my relationship with God. I've also learned new prayer practices and spiritual practices along the way through my own continuing education and trying to be a better spiritual director. So that has been just a wonderful experience. Every time I take a class in continuing ed related to spiritual direction or any spiritual tool or practice, I always learn something that changes my own spiritual journey and connection with God. It is sacred and holy ground and an honor and a blessing to sit with people in these kinds of moments. As a pastor, I would imagine, I know you know this too, that it's just an amazing and touching and beautiful experience. And so I feel very grateful and don't take any of that for granted. And that changes my life, my walk with God.
So what are some of the spiritual practices you're doing right now to sustain yourself while you're going through your work?
Well, walking, we're talking and walking, listening to something nourishing or something that's just complete escape while I'm walking, and just using in nature. Being in nature is a way that one question I have explored often with people is, when do you know that you're sacred? If you could fill in the blank to the question, I know I'm sacred when. I borrowed this question from a class that I was in, so give credit to that. And so for me, one of the ways is being in nature, looking at trees and walking in nature is very nourishing and healing for me. And I think it is for all of us, really.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that is the number one answer I get when I talk to people about when do you feel closest to God?
Yeah.
And it's almost always when I'm out in nature. I am waiting for that person. It says when I'm locked in my dark room playing video games, that is when I am closest. I am waiting for that.
Let me know if you actually hear someone say that. I would love to know.
I think it's going to be like my youngest son. That's his world right there. Is
Yes,
in
I
a dark room
understand.
playing video games.
Absolutely. I have also enjoyed and appreciated the practice of centering prayer, meditation, just finding moments of stillness. It's not an easy practice, though. I don't know if you practiced meditation or centering prayer.
I've done a little bit. We are just starting a yoga and meditation class at our church.
That's great.
We got a new member that came in. He has been teaching it for a while. He came from the Episcopal Church. We weren't church poaching, but the Episcopal Church is like 40 miles from here. So he decided, I want to go to church in my own town. And it's been a blessing. So we are
Sure.
just excited about that. And I may
That's
take
great.
advantage of it.
That sounds great. I would encourage you to do so. It just having a few moments of silence and making that space for God is very soothing and calming. On days when there may be some anxious moments and or whatever it might be, it just changes the shape of how I enter the day.
Yeah.
And then taking moments of just 1 or 2 minutes of stillness throughout the day. Breath prayers, I love breath prayers. Just taking deep and cleansing breaths is healing. And occasionally I find prayer of examine at the end of the day to be really healing and life giving as well. So those are some of the things.
I'll be honest, I struggle with silence. I don't like
Understandable.
it.
Yeah.
And I think it's gotten worse as I've gotten older. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me more about that. What's that look like?
Well, it looks like, I mean, now I don't even really, when I'm driving, don't even really listen to music anymore. I need something
Mhm.
where people are talking. I want to hear
Mhm.
voices and people and hear talking. And so
Yeah.
I do a lot of podcasts, listen to the PBS NewsHour instead of watching it on TV at night. I just listen
Mhm.
to it the next day,
Yeah.
just so I have that noise going on. And
Yeah.
it's,
I understand that. I think you're not alone in that, Bill. I think that many people struggle with that. Something about silence is unsettling for many of us.
I wonder if it's modern loneliness.
Mm.
I've got my oldest son and my wife here, and we're together, and I'm not lonely in that sense, but I think there may be a loneliness of larger community because we're not
Mhm.
as connected as we used to be face
Mhm.
to face.
Right. That's
Mm,
true. And it's a very vulnerable space to be in just silence, isn't it?
yes. I think you're spiritually directing me right now. You're Yodaing me, right? But yeah, I think I've noticed it recently that I just don't like the silence anymore, and there was a period where I really enjoyed silence.
Yeah.
And so
And you know what? When we notice those kinds of things about ourselves, whether it be that or something else that has just kind of been a little something changing in our spiritual life, it invites more questions. And what is it? A fear of something, or a worry, or a loneliness, or a vulnerability? Asking questions about that can be a real pathway to understanding ourselves better in God.
yeah, I am did you ever watch the show What We Do in the Shadows?
No, I haven't. Tell me.
Okay, it's a mockumentary about vampires, and
Oh,
there's one vampire, and it's a comedy, so but, there's one vampire named Colin Robinson, and he's not your normal vampire, he's an energy vampire, and I joke, "That's me, I need to be around people." That's where all my energy comes from,
yeah.
is being around people, so I
Yeah.
think that's also part of the not liking silence.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, may I ask you if you were to fill in the blank, I know a sacred when, how would you answer that?
I know I am sacred when I am caring for others. Like most pastors, I'm a people pleaser, and I want
Yeah.
to care for other people, and I get a lot of energy and from that, but it's also very draining
Yeah.
in
Yes.
the same sense,
Yes. It fills you up, yet empties you as well.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I joke with my wife that I come home after preaching and go take a nap. And I said the Holy Spirit walked through me; it wore me out. Yes,
It was exhausting. That's
yes, it felt great, but I'm worn out now.
right. Yeah. That makes sense. I understand that very well.
Yeah. The You brought up something a little bit earlier about people being hurt by the church, and I think church
Mhm.
trauma is a real thing.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and if I don't think I know it's a real thing, right? But
Yes.
and so, would a spiritual director be a good place for someone to go that has suffered from church trauma?
Yes.
Yeah.
Unequivocally, yes. It would be a great place to go for someone who has suffered church trauma.
Right.
And I think it isn't because it's a nurturing, safe, confidential space.
Yeah. It can be an entry point back into the family of God.
It could be. It
Right.
could be, or just and an entryway into understanding themselves, taking a look at what they learned, what hurt them, naming it, understanding their view of God, past, present, and where they want to be in their relationship with God. But church trauma church hurt really hurts people.
Yes. So I'm going to give you one more serious question, and then we'll have a couple of fun things to ask. So the
Okay.
last serious question is, what do you think God is teaching you these days through your ministry as a spiritual director?
Oh, what do I think God is teaching me these days through the ministry of being a spiritual director? That's a great question, Bill. Thank
Chat
you.
GTP. I'm a cheater.
I get it. We all borrow things from places, don't we? Gosh, experiences and people who are teachers show up, it seems, for me every day. I think God has taught me patience. I think I've learned patience. I am a helper by personality, and I'm driven in my heart and soul to be a helper and sometimes a fixer. And so sitting and keeping and holding silence. There's often a lot of silence in spiritual direction conversations, and not fixing a person or not trying to fix. I can't fix a situation, but holding back from jumping in and offering, here's a practical thing you could do, or here's a this or that. I find myself, if there is an open door for a teachable opportunity, that I always ask a person's permission before I launch into that. But I think that being still and being quiet and waiting has probably been the greatest teacher for me, for my own soul.
Right.
Be still and to be quiet and to wait.
Before I ask this question, I tell you a joke. This pastor was doing a children's sermon. I'm sure you've heard this, and he tells the kids, "What is fuzzy, gray, climbs trees, and has a long fuzzy tail?" And the kids sit there perplexed. And finally, little Johnny raises his hand and he says, "It doesn't sound right, but I know the answer is Jesus." So, with that in mind, the answer can't be Jesus. You could sit down for spiritual direction with any figure from the Bible. Who and what would you ask them?
Oh, that's a hard question, Bill. And it can't be Jesus.
Can't be Jesus. That was
If I could sit down with spiritual direction from anyone from the Bible, who would it be? I think Mary, the Marys,
all the Marys.
all the Marys. Yeah, I really do. I think, yeah. That's who it
And
would
what
be.
would you ask them?
Oh, what was your life really like? How did you navigate all there is? Who are you? Who are you really? What do you really want us to know?
And
Something like
last
that.
question. Last
Okay.
question.
Are these the fun questions?
Yes, if your soul had a theme song.
Oh my gosh. That is a hard question for me. My husband is a music lover, loves music. We have this game that he plays that every time a song comes on, if we're in the car or anywhere, he'll say, "Who's the artist? What's the name of the song?" And I never know. Never know it. Okay, the theme song for my soul. Gosh, this is a hard one.
It's the fun ones that are hard.
It is the farthest. That's so true. Oh my goodness. It's going to take me a second, Bill. Hang on there with me. Oh gosh, my mind is going through all of my playlists at the moment.
It is a hard question. I'm trying to think of my own.
Are you? Okay, you
Yeah.
go first.
Well, I'm just gonna go with I'm gonna pick a song from my favorite band of all time. I'm gonna go with Ocean Size for
Oh,
Fiction. That
great. You know, I this is gonna I am obsessed with the movie Wicked. I've seen it 3 times, and our church, the pastors in our church, they're currently in a worship and sermon series Beyond the Yellow Brick Road. So there's been music from The Wizard of Oz and The Wiz and Wicked, and I cannot tell you how many times I have listened to the song Defying Gravity lately, and I just feel a connection, because I think my personal spiritual journey has always been, who am I? What do I want to be when I grow up? How can I be my authentic self? And I think that song kind of speaks to my soul journey in a way.
Awesome. All right. If people want to connect with you, how can they do that?
My email is what is my email? mjcole at arumc.org. My cell number is 501-960-7731. I have a website called sacredpathinc.com. You can connect with me that way as well.
Well, thank you so much, Mary Jane. It has been so much fun hanging out with you today, and it has been a pleasure.
Too,
and go out and be Yoda for the world.
I will do my best. Thank you for that. Thank you so much. Thanks for all that you do in the world.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Together we will fly with every breath we come alive.